The NCAA Transfer Portal. You've probably heard it as a buzzword where coaches talk about it, advisors talk about it, and all that stuff to see how they're going to use it. And you probably want to know how it's going to impact your career moving forward. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive on the NCAA Transfer Portal and talk everything about it, basically. So we'll be talking about what it is exactly, how players can use it, how coaches can use the tool, why it's gained so much popularity, and then the overall trends moving forward. And finally, how it's going to impact you, a junior hockey player trying to play NCAA hockey. So first of all, what is the transfer portal? Basically, it's a streamlined platform where players who wish to transfer from their university program can post on the NCAA portal itself, so they can go ahead and post their profile. And from there, the coaches have a nice dashboard of all the players who are wishing to transfer. They're on a nice dashboard as profiles, basically. So they have a nice profile of all the players. So it's a really streamlined and useful tool for players and coaches. And just as an example, so you guys can kind of get a visual here, this is typically what it looks like that coaches can see. They see this whole nice dashboard view of all the players that are available wanting to transfer. The transfer portal was created October 15th, 2018. Before there were still transfers and all that stuff, but it wasn't a streamlined portal like now. And the whole goal was to make the whole process way more streamlined, way more effective to use for both players and coaches to save a lot of time wasting and everything. So there's a lot of pros that came out of it. So let's dive into the weeds as to how players use the portal. So like I said before, if a player wants to transfer, they can go and submit their name and their information on the portal to let coaches know that they're wanting to transfer from their NCAA program. Now, coaches are able to see it, but their home coach, so their coach at whatever program they're at, let's say they're at Boston University and they want to transfer because they're not playing or whatever reason, their coaches will not find out on the portal. They will not know that their players are on the portal for at least 30 days, okay? The first 30 days, if you submit a request on the transfer portal, your coach doesn't know officially. I'm putting in quotation marks here because unfortunately, it's a small world in hockey and coaches talk, and this is the big con for players putting their name on the transfer portal, that if they do put their name, typically coaches will talk and a coach will find out indirectly, especially if you're at a big name NCAA D1 program. Coaches will find out immediately. If you want to transfer and put your name on there, just know that there's a good chance that your coach might find out. So my perspective is it's always good to be upfront and honest with coaches when you're doing this stuff, okay? You can tell them your intention at the end of your meeting and all that stuff, and then, hopefully you can have an open conversation and it's not really a big deal. If you go without telling the coach behind the coach's back or something like that, typically they'll find out and it's not a great look. Now, if you're in a D3 program, even if it's more of a low-end D3 program, coaches might not find out at that point because there's so many players from D3 programs applying to the transfer portal, but they might, so just keep that in the back of your mind. It's not as big of a deal as if a big name like D1 program, a guy from that program applies to the transfer portal. Usually they find out a lot quicker, but even if you're a D3 program, there is that chance. So again, honesty, being transparent with coaches is always the best way to move forward. So now let's dive into how the coaches use the portal. So it's a huge game changer for the coaches. Ever since they got that streamlined portal, it's nice because they have a nice dashboard of all the players that are available, right? They don't have to go digging here and there and everywhere to try and find transfers. They have the nice portal available to them, and it's really easy for coaches to contact players from the portal. So that makes it really streamlined, really easy for coaches. The biggest thing though is that coaches, from what I've talked to, from my friends coaching NCAA and from other coaches that we interact with on a daily basis, basically they say that they use the transfer portal as basically shoo-ins. It's not the players they're going to build a foundation of their team with. It's basically players that they're going to be like, hey, I need a guy on my second power play that has a really good shot, or I need a guy that's going to be good on my first PK unit. Those are the guys that they're going to kind of fill in. It's not going to be those big franchise players that they're going to use to fill in from the transfer portal for the most part. Obviously, you might find a transfer that's great, but typically from what I've heard is transfers do come with a lot of baggage as per what the coaches say. So it's usually not their go-to guys, but it is a really useful tool still for coaches to grab some players. There's one exception here, the 5th years right now because of the pandemic rule and all that, and we're going to get into that. But basically, apart from that, it's not the foundation players, but it's a really useful, streamlined tool overall. So what are the trends moving forward here with the transfer portal? So obviously, when it was first created, streamlined platform, it was new, coaches use it quite a bit, and the number of transfers likely went up, right, after the portal was created. But then it died down a little bit because they kind of saw that, okay, these transfers, they're good, but they come with some baggage, they're not my foundation players, so on and so forth. But then the pandemic happened, and the rule of 50, players being able to play out a 5th year and being able to transfer and play out their 5th year came along, and that really changed the game, and the use of the transfer portal really exploded. I can't tell you the amount of emails or texts that coaches say, hey, I really like your player, but we have 5 transfers coming in in next year or something like that are fifth years. So because of that, it's really made it harder for players that are junior players or prep players wanting to get those NCAA D1 commitments because they're relying on it so much since the pandemic and the 50-year rule. And it makes sense, right? Because typically a transfer comes with baggage, right? They usually are transferring because they don't like the amount of ice time they're getting, they don't get along with a coach for whatever reason, right? But when it's a fifth year, typically it's because they're trying to pursue a master's program or maybe a PhD program and they just want to play out their last year at a good institution. You know, usually they're not transferring because they hated their program. They did well at their program for 4 years and then they just want to transfer and play out that fifth year. The rule is going to end in the 2025-2026 season. So for one more season, we're going to see this, and I expect the trend to start going downwards afterwards, okay? I expect that once it gets to the fifth-year rule not being applicable anymore, coaches are still going to use the transfer portal, but more like we mentioned a while ago, more as like fillers and not as foundation guys. So I think the trend is going to go a little bit downwards once the fifth-year rule expires. That being said, I don't think that the use of transfers and using the transfer portal altogether is going to go away at all. I still think it's going to be used, but more as a filler. Just to give you some numbers, so the last team that won a championship without a transfer on their roster was North Dakota in 2016. Since then, every team at the NCAA D1 level that won a championship has had at least one transfer on their roster. And you know, since the pandemic, yes, it's been a little bit inflated as to the number of transfers, but I still think we're going to see quite a bit of teams with transfers on them and using the transfer portal. Currently, I kind of want to give you the stats by conference. So for the Atlantic Conference, there's 43 transfers. For the CCHA Conference, there's 43 transfers. Hockey East has 36. The Big Ten has 27. Independent have 24. ECAC have 22. And just note that IVs do not have transfers because of their academic standards, and Air Force and Army also do not have transfers on their rosters. So yes, these numbers are likely a little bit inflated right now because of the fifth-year rule, but even 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I still think there's going to be a significant amount of transfers on teams, right, as filler guys. So what does this mean here for a junior player or a prep player trying to get an NCAA D1 commit moving forward? And for now, until the fifth-year rule is done, it's definitely much harder. You have to be that much better, dominating that much more in a really good league as a junior player or a really, really dominant prep player to get an NCAA D1 commit, at least for the next year or so because of the fifth-year rule where they do utilize a lot more transfers. But even after the fifth-year rule, the portal is quite streamlined. They're still going to pick players, you know, more as filler roles and stuff, but that means that there's likely less spots overall for players. So a more streamlined portal has pros for coaches, also cons, but for players, it just means you have to be that much better. It always comes to the final message that if you're so good that they can't ignore you, you're gonna find a way to success. You just have to be that much better, develop, play your best, and try your best to find the best league possible where you can dominate and develop at the best rate. You know, that's what it comes down to. It will be a little bit harder, but I think once a fifth-year rule is done overall, I don't think that it's gonna be this impossible task to try and get a D1 commit or even a D3 commit. You just have to be a really good player. That's the final message for me. So if you like this video, click one of these two to keep watching and follow similar content. If you haven't already, absolutely destroy that like button, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. If you have any questions for us whatsoever, you can reach us directly at AHA Plus for free, or you can schedule a consult with us. Thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll catch you on that next one.